I just realized I look like Doc from Back to the Future.
I love the mad scientist look. I think that all
Yeah,
the best
I've
artists have that.
I'm sure you've heard about all of this GameStop shit. So I've been this whole week has been a fucking roller coaster.
Yeah, I was woken up early yesterday morning because my girlfriend Jan, was like, you bought AMC shares last year. You should sell them." I'm like, "Okay," so I just sold them. I'm like, because it was such a fluke that I just like
Yeah,
lucked out and I had them, and
that's nice.
yeah, I didn't sell all of them, but I sold most of them. I'm just like, all right, yeah, this is too shady for me. I'm more of a long term guy, so I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
right. So am I. That's why this week has been so stressful. Like, uh, I locked in like some gains today, but like I still have a lot on the line, and I'm just like, half of me just wants it to be over, and like the other half of me is like, I don't like I gotta see this out.
yeah.
I don't want to kick myself later. So
It almost feels like, so I've tried to do the thing where like I actively monitor the market. I try to do short term gains, but then I always well, after like a week, I feel like I've spent months at a casino and I just am exhausted. And I don't know. I
really,
don't know how people can pull that stuff off. And so
like you literally start visiting casinos.
no, I just feel like I
Oh,
have.
oh, you feel like you were at a casino.
Yeah,
Yes, that's how I feel.
and
When if you were being literal there, I was gonna be like, I'm not surprised.
no,
Like,
I mean, yeah, it's the same thing. It,
yeah, yeah, it is,
yeah,
and it's like it's kind of more like poker because like you have a hand, right? Like we're sitting here and we're like, okay, we think these guys got to cover their shorts, like blah blah blah. But yeah, like it's you just don't know. I mean, these hedge funds, they're not telling us everything. They're
yeah.
just not going to, and the media is not going to tell us everything, and so yeah, it's a gamble in the end. So yeah, I'm the same way. I just invest. I don't trade at all. This is the only thing I regret is that I had a gut feeling that this was like I do go on Wall Street bets a lot. Like I was there when it was only like 300,000 people and stuff. Um, and I knew that they were right. Like I was like, this is probably a good trade, but again, it's a gamble. And I just wish I had listened to myself because if I had done it last week, I would be in such a good position right now. But right now I'm like up a lot, but I'm taking like 5-digit swings like daily, So it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, when I bought AMC, I bought them with the assumption that theaters would be been reopened by now, and that it would be a good long term steady gain. I was expecting
Hmm.
all those Marvel releases,
Uh-huh.
and then this thing just happened, and it's shady as hell, and I don't want to be involved in shadiness, so I just got rid of them. I'm just like, all right, I got a gain out of it. But I was hoping to hold on to it for the next Marvel phase or whatever, and it's just
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
AMC was part of the whole GameStop Reddit. They call it something. What do they call it? Like
Yeah,
Reddit.
which is like dumb because like, at this point, we're not the ones pushing up the market. Like we don't have enough money.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Watching
literally
CNBC is
disposable
like,
income.
sorry, what'd you say?
It was really literally the only disposable income I had last year is what I used.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. On AMC, killer. Cool. All right. Well, we could go on like this for fucking hours because this is
yeah.
wild. But let's do the
All right.
thing we came here
Well,
for.
I'll do a quick intro for everybody. So the mad scientist on your screen right now is Brian Birnbaum, co-founder and executive editor at Animal Riot Press, Baltimore native, author of Emerald City. He transplanted over to New York just like me. Only difference is he made it. How you doing, Brian?
Oh no 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 no
I think
no!
you
I
started a
wish.
press. That's a
Yeah,
big.
that's
That's a
true.
big deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's been great. It's been really rocky. Because we've in 2020 not only was there the pandemic, but we also had to deal with like some legal stuff that was really
I
difficult.
heard about that.
Which hence the name change and everything. But yeah, it's good. I mean, it's great to like kind of tie the community we've built together into something uh with a name on it, I guess, or a legal name on it. I don't know.
Yeah, I wish I had been contacted when that all went down, because I had some people I would have put you in touch with, and then you wouldn't have had to change the name. But I also understand that you don't really want to talk about that. So
Yeah, that's true.
it's an
No,
incident that,
well,
unless you want to.
I appreciate retroactively appreciate the gesture.
Um, but the name of the press now is Animal Riot Press. That's a great name, and let's start with the seeds of this thing, because I'm interested in the story of how you started. Uh, I you started a press at a time when people aren't buying physical books as much as they used to. That's an interesting decision.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so let's start with the seeds of this thing. How far back?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. It all starts with the reading series. The old name of the reading series, now it's the Animal Riot reading series, but we in 2014, I believe. Yeah. I was the first person to read there, even though I'm not actually one of the official founders of the reading series. I'm kind of more of a mascot. I came every week, and I still would if it was live, but and I helped sell raffle tickets and everything. And I read the first time it was held, and I mean the first time we held a reading, there was maybe 50, 60, 70 people there. It was great from the get go.
Where were they? Where was this?
It's at downtown Uptown.
Downtown Uptown.
So yeah, let me start at the beginning. I'm
Yeah,
like
sure, sure.
I got ADD, so,
That's fine.
so let me start from the beginning. Um, right. So we're all at Sarah Lawrence College. A few of us. It's me, Katie Rainey, Devin Kelly, um, Katie Longafano was someone who used to run the reading series with all of us, but she moved to Brooklyn and started another one and all that stuff. But she was there in the beginning, and we had a couple other friends that kind of gave us support. But so it was pretty much everyone from Sarah Lawrence, and then we kind of just they had this idea one day, and I was kind of just there as they had the back and forth talking about how to start it and all that stuff. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work getting emails emails established, getting it out to everyone. And luckily, Katie and Devin are really good with uh, collaboration and community. It's the big ticket to this whole project, really. That's what it's all about. Um, and yeah, I think it was September 14th, 15th. It was right near my birthday. We had the first one. Um, I read with David Hollander, whose book we just put out. That was our second title. And he read so much better than me. It was one of the first times I've ever read. It was horrifying. But yeah, like I said, it blew up from the get go, and the submissions that come in every month it's crazy. Like it's a lot of work, but it was really just a groundswell, and we kept going, and there are a lot of cool things we had to deal with, like in downtown Uptown, we call it DTUT, as I said. They still kind of let patrons in while we're there. So there's we got the mic set up, and there's a shit ton of people. Or sorry, I don't know if I can say that.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
you
people.
can fucking curse. It's all good.
All right, cool. We're good. Good. Um, and they're just people. Sometimes they come in, they're obnoxious.
Yeah.
One of our favorite stories we like to tell is that a couple broke up in the bathroom while we were having while the one of our fourth or fifth readers were reading. And the bathroom's kind of just around this corner. And like the mic's kind of in front of this wall, and then right around the corner of this wall it's like so it's right behind them, just divided by one wall, and they're yelling so loud that we can just hear them clearly, like as well as the reader, as if they had a mic. I don't know, it might have been like amplified by the mic, even like coming permeating the wall.
I would have taken the mic and just aimed it to the bathroom.
Yeah, right,
That's
right.
more interesting than my writing.
I know, right? And to be fair, the reader was extremely courteous. Um, she just afterwards she just was all smiles, whatever. But so yeah, we had to contend with that stuff. And sometimes when people are obnoxious, I'd be the one to go back and be like, all right, shut the hell up, guys. Like, come on, be respectful. I know you guys came to this bar to have fun, but there are a million bars here. You can go anywhere else if you don't want to be part of a reading series, whatever. So it's always been weird to me, but that they let other people in. But I guess at the beginning more so. But then in the end, I realized it. We would get a lot of just random people that came in and wanted to watch and stuff. So anyway, it became kind of a household name in the literary community, at least.
Yeah.
Um, by the by the time we were getting ready to put out my book, I would go to these like parties or whatever, and if people were writers in New York, I would mention it, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I know that. Like I know the reading series. I know the Animal Riot reading series, whatever." So it that's basically why we spun it off into a press, because I was going to publish a novel, and I had gotten an agent. Um, it was a junior agent for Susan Gollum, who's Jonathan Franzen's agent. Rachel Kushner, someone that people probably like more. She wrote the Flamethrowers.
Yeah.
She's great, but so like really big time names. But and I was really excited. But about 5 months into our collaboration, if you want to call it, he kind of just left the industry. I don't know why, and he tried to pass me along, and it didn't work. And so I was pretty bummed. I thought I was kind of on my way, and then it fell through. And so I was texting my friend John, who lives in Seattle. He was my roommate when I was living in Seattle right after college. Um, and he was just like, "Hey, like, why don't we just start our own press and we'll publish your novel?" And that was it. Um, I told Katie about it. I told Devin about it, and it kind of just worked out that Katie wanted to be involved. I showed her the business plan, and we just went after it. And we've made a lot of mistakes, like for sure. The legal stuff aside, that was more just unfortunate. But the more about the you know how to spend your money, like what to do with publicity and stuff like that. We realized that like as a grassroots organization, it's better to behave that way. Like we tried to use some capital to kind of garner attention, eyeball support, like spread the news, whatever. And um, my advice to people that are starting a press, like the only way I would spend money is if it's on marketing, like digital marketing or something like that. But anyway, long story short, yeah, that's it. I mean, we basically worked our asses off for a year trying to put this thing together. We contracted Olivia Kroom, who's worked at a lot of big presses and is a freelancer for book design. Uh, we got editors. I mean, we did all the professional stuff, so we're kind of proving that you can do all the things that the big shots can do, in house. But it is a lot harder. It's a labor of love, unless you get a book that kind of blows up.
Yeah.
Um, and my book did, not that great. It sold a little bit. David's book has done pretty well. So, you know, it's just kind of, you just got to keep working on it. It's tough. It's a
Yeah.
lot tougher than other industries where the idea is kind of to just make money. And like, books, you don't go into books saying, I want to make money. It's not what you do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Well,
I don't know. I hope I hit some of the important parts of that.
yeah, I'd
That
like to
timeline. But
unpack kind of the workflow. So, David's been working on this book for a long time. Even when I was in the MFA program, he was talking about it and potentially
mhm.
publishing it under the former name. And so you get this manuscript. What is the workflow from the moment you get the first version of the manuscript?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing we did was read it. We
Yeah.
read it.
Yeah.
I think that gave us just a good jumping off point. And it's kind of like how anyone else would do it. The editor reads it first, and then it's not exactly the editor that's the line editor or blah blah blah. And in a small press, you gotta wear many hats. But we read it first, and then obviously we decided to publish it already. It wasn't a submission, so the next step is we write down all the things that we want to do just between ourselves, between the high level editing, like our press is like executive editing, and then basically from there we hire the line and like developmental editors, and we kind of work as a group, but they more work together. For David's book, we did it more in house because we kind of trusted David, and I guess maybe we trusted ourselves a little bit too. But we just had one editor instead of a developmental, and then a line copy editor, really. Um, so that's the first step. And kind of meanwhile, simultaneously, at some point, you start to get the PR stuff together, get the book design together, start planning like a little book tour. And all of this stuff just happens on a massive spreadsheet with like many tabs. It just takes a lot of organization. And that's all Katie. Like she's 100% the go-to person for that. I'm terrible with that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's really just at that point, it's just pounding the pavement. Really, it's just making phone calls, making sending emails, and really just hoping you hear back.
Where are you physically printing these?
So we do Ingram Spark, which is a print-on-demand service, and they do print runs as well. And so we have a deal with Amazon. So we do we do like their affiliate program. So if people order through Amazon, they'll get a print-on-demand copy.
Gotcha.
But if we do our own print run, we'll get some books from Ingram.
Okay.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, we don't really use anyone else. It's pretty
clever.
much it's pretty much Ingram.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah,
Very
I mean,
clever.
we're on Bookshop now, but I'm not sure where the books come from. They could come from other sources, but I'm pretty sure it's Ingram. I don't know how they do their cheaper prices. Honestly, their markdowns are pretty. They have a crazy business model that I really respect. But
is Amazon your highest grossing area where you selling the most?
yes, for the second book, yes. For my book, it was more. There were a lot of sales at the launch, which was great. We really wish we could have had a launch for David. That was a struggle. The whole doing this during a pandemic was an interesting thing, and I can talk about that a little bit too. But I sold more at the launch and then kind of at readings and stuff like that. And then I would kind of like, if I met people, I would be like, in a certain situation, I would bring it up or something like that. And I hate that part. I hate being a shill for my own book. It sucks. But you got to do it today.
Yeah.
But David's book has been all Amazon, 100%, because that's where we're at right now. Or Bookshop or Barnes and Noble. You can get it really anywhere, but we just have the deal with Amazon that like, they're going to get a certain cut, so that we can get a certain rate on books that are sold through there, essentially.
What was so obviously plans changed this past year because of the pandemic. What was your plan initially compared to what you ended up doing in terms of just getting that book exposure?
Yeah, it was the same thing as doing the same thing as my book, except minus the PR that we paid for, the publicity. We realized that we paid a good deal of money for publicity, and we realized we could do it ourselves even better, really. Yeah. So that was the big mistake I think we made. But that was so we were still able to do that, except we weren't able to do the in-person events. That was the big, especially because David is so good. He's such a good reader and he's such a good personality. So that kind of sucked. But yeah, the launch too, especially. I mean, we did a launch on Zoom and it went really well. I hosted it with someone at one of the, oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on the name. One of the bookstores up at Cold Spring where he lives. This is terrible. Maybe it'll come back to me. But and it went really well. It was great. It was amazing. But and you have all the people like commenting and there's all the support and stuff. But it would have been nice to have a real launch. That would have been great. And then other than that, just the readings and meeting in person maybe sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of this is done remotely now, so we were able to pull it off. Other than that, it wasn't damaging to the point where where I think we could have done X times better.
Yeah.
Those are really the only changes.
How did you get your startup capital?
Really, it's just John. John worked at Amazon for like 10 years, and he kind of put up the seed money.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it was just his money. Yeah.
Are you making enough back off the first two books that you can release a third?
So, yes and no. Have we made up for the first two books? No, because mainly because of the things that kind of happened outside of those two books. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Um, and maybe we wouldn't have quite broken even yet on the first two books, just because the first book was such a learning experience. I mean, you take someone like me who's an unknown author, and then we're publishing a book for the first time. It's not easy,
Yeah.
it's not easy at all. It's not exactly taking. In some ways, it's harder because you're not trying to take a book and just put it on Amazon and sell copies. In a way, that would be easier. Um, you know, we want to retain that sort of community presence, and that's really important to us. So having a real publishing shop is very important to us, and of course we want to get there to the point. It's not like, oh, we don't care about sale, nothing like that. It's more, it takes time. And so you have to do so much more when you're putting out a professional novel. you know um I mean, everything from everything I told you to getting blurbs. You got to get the right blurbs. All this stuff takes a lot of work. So the first book, we lost money. A lot of it was because of the stuff outside of our control. But the second book, we did really well. We did really well. So if we can just keep that up, it's good. I mean, we have another book coming out by someone named Annie Krabbenschmidt, who read at our who read at our series about 2 years ago. I want to say now, if I'm remembering right. And she's just brilliant. Like, she's just a great writer. She's also pretty unknown, but she has a podcast and she has some followers, and she's really, she's a hustler. Um, and the writing's good. That's kind of all that matters to us. And really the sad part is we have all these submissions that I really want to go faster. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's so many good books. We've been in For one person, we've been in talks with, to the point where we had like a sit down dinner. Um, but it's just, when those things happen in the beginning, there's fits and starts. So
Yeah. But it sounds
uh,
like you were able to move forward at some pace, which is
what's that?
sounds like you're able to move forward at some pace. You're not
Yes,
stalled,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's a good thing.
And especially considering the circumstances, I
Yeah.
think it's pretty great. I think we've done a really good job considering the circumstances. Um, and the good news is, like, when you have a press and you have books in your catalog, you just keep building from that list, and every book you put out is just another book that we can put on the shelf and people can buy. So it starts really slowly for us, considering a lot of the things that happen, but it really is a labor of love, uh, until you kind of start turning a profit like we did this year.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to start a sister press, and I say sister because I don't believe that we're all in competition with one another.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah,
what,
I kind of like that.
yeah, what sort of advice would you give them if they're just starting out, if they're just seeding the idea? What do you wish you had known?
Before we started,
Yeah,
that's a really good question, because there's so many things. I wish I wish we had known how much labor had to go into each book. And mind you, we came in it pretty clear heads. We weren't like, oh yeah, we're going to put out 10 books. We even had a so-called, brother or sister sibling bay press, whatever you want to call it, that we were kind of working with in the beginning, like, to get advice. These guys called SFK, Southern Fried Karma. That's a mouthful. Southern
fried
Fried Karma.
karma.
And this guy Steve, who runs it, is just, I mean, he's awesome. He's the greatest. And the thing is, he's a little bit older than us, and he runs it more like a business. And I don't want to say that, like, he's looking for profit more. It's that he has a little bit more experience than us in running a business. So we're getting there. Like, this year, you can see we put out David's book, and suddenly we're in the black just off of 1 year's experience. Um, but we learned a lot from him. So I think we would have been maybe way worse off considering everything we went through. But I wish we would have known how much labor that went into every book, because even with very reasonable standards, I want to say, we were thinking maybe 3 or 4 books a year to start. And now we're at maybe less than a book a year now. Like, I don't know if we're going to get a book again out by September,
Yeah.
you know? Right now it's January. Like, we definitely could. I think it's possible. We don't have a set timeline yet right now, though, because of everything that's gone on. And, it's just, it's so much effort with the pandemic to, for like, I lost my job for like during the
Yeah.
pandemic. So I had to move back to DC right now and, kind of start over for myself while running this press. And so it's tough. It's really tough. So that's what I would say. I would say everyone should set expectations and then maybe say, hey, look, like, it's okay if we don't meet those expectations, and also to set them very reasonably. Um, because no one says you have to wake up tomorrow and then start a press and then the next year you have to put out a book that sells
Yeah.
20,000 copies. No one's putting a gun to your head and saying that. So
Yeah, I always tell
that's my biggest
creatives
advice.
to. I always tell my like creatives who are looking for advice on the goalposts are to stay productive, not necessarily to meet them. Like you can
Yes.
move the goalposts and you can change what that goalpost is, as long as
Yes.
you have
Yes.
something to
Exactly.
keep you going.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually you'll finish the project if you just keep
Right.
going. Um,
That's it. I mean, that's it. It's no different than writing a book. You know,
yeah,
if you're writing a book, you know, you can set a deadline, but if you meet the deadline and it's not good enough, you're not going to submit it.
yeah,
It's just not, it's not how it works. Um, and I mean, that's apropos of running a press. It's the same thing. Obviously, it is a business, so it's not the same thing. We can't say we're putting the book out on September 1st and then put it out on October 30th. That's not a good look. That's not professional. But um, at the same time, yeah, it's you can go at your own pace. And yeah, I'm trying to think of something else because there's so many things like that are really important. I would say really something that we did a really good job of, because I also think we did a good job with expectations, but we even kind of fell not short of it, but we were a little not as we weren't going as rapidly, I would say. But also, make sure you organize yourself beforehand. We had a business plan written up. John wrote up a business plan that was really remarkable. It had everything from our mission statement, kind of the more motivational side, to the business analysis, the dollar cost analysis of, like, how much is XYZ going to cost and how much are we going to get for X, Y, and Z. And I would really recommend that because you know as much as running a small press is not the fastest way to $1 million, it's also, you want to keep doing it. You want to keep doing it. One of the most important things is that you keep doing it for the writers. If we went under tomorrow and then David had a book out with a press that suddenly no longer existed, that kind of sucks.
yeah, yeah.
And that happens to people. It does. It happens to people a lot. So, you know, that's what I would say. So the business plan was big. Having an organized spreadsheet of pretty much every single thing you want to
Yeah.
do, under which category, whether it's publicity, blah, 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 everything. And, funny enough, neither of those two things are what I did. That's not how I contributed. So, of course, I'm the one to say,
You know,
but
I think the most mature thing I've heard from you though is that you had these reasonable expectations. Like you weren't going to put out 10 books a year. You knew you weren't. And that to me is a sign of somebody who's going into this business venture that they've never been in, that is mature about it. And God, I've met so many entrepreneurs who have no idea what they're getting into, and they have
mm-hmm,
these crazy expectations because they have no radar for
mm-hmm,
how much work is going to go into these. And even if you didn't know how much labor was going to go into it, you still kind of must have had some sort of inkling that it wasn't going to be easy.
right, right,
So,
right. Yeah. And as much as I just told you that moving back home and everything was so hard for me, at the same time, it did free up some time for me because, when I was working a full time job, that was also very hard,
yeah,
you know, and one thing you said is that, people should have reasonable expectations. I also want people to know that it's also okay when you don't meet them. It's kind of like there's this gap between being, I'll just put it bluntly, stupid, and saying, hey, we're going, you know, we're going through the stratosphere with this. Like I have the idea that's going to take us there. I know it. It's like, no, that's not going to work. An idea is literally probably 0.01% of running a business. It really is about um, how you maneuver to like consummating that idea. That's the game. And I want people to know that on the way to you know getting here required a lot of failure. And right now, in a lot of ways, we're still failing. It's like a lot of people look in at us and they're like, wow, this is amazing. Like, holy shit, like, this is incredible. Like, you started the show. I mean, I know you were kidding, but, like, you made it. It's like, we're like, no, we know we didn't make it. Like, we have a long way to go. But, but at the same time, like, you're not going to get anywhere. That's the gap there. Like, you're not going to get anywhere unless you set those
Yeah.
expectations. But like you said, it's about being aware that you're not there yet. It's like if you know that you haven't achieved X, Y, and Z, then you might be okay. It's not nothing's. I mean, nothing's guaranteed in business. It's like the vast majority of companies don't work out.
Yeah.
So
Well, the
tough.
the thing is I first off, I always got the sense that it was probably not easy at any point to be doing what you're doing. But from the other side, the grass is always greener, right? So I was an undergrad. I think I finished in June of 2019 at the same MFA program that you went to. It's where we met David Hollander.
Mm-hmm.
And David was telling me about it. And the grass seemed so green. And there was also an element of jealousy where I'm like, my favorite professor is getting published by one of his former students. That is like a solid gold story. And so when I say you've made it, you have made it, even though it doesn't feel like it, because it's never going to feel like it.
Yes,
And that's
exactly.
one thing that I've failed to get across again and again and again to people is no matter how far you get, you could have one of those Newbery Prize things on the cover of your children's book, right? It's still not going to feel like you made it because
Mm-hmm.
what you think it'll feel like beforehand is never what it feels like in reality. You could have 1,000 books under your belt as a press and still be feeling like you're going into a labor-driven job. Like it just
Yeah,
is what
yeah,
it is, and it's work. And
yeah.
that if that's the one advice I really wish people would latch onto is it'll always feel like work, which is why it's so fucking important that you love it. It's why it's so important that you not do it just for the money. And I think that lesson has been so recurring in these podcasts, and it just popped up again. It's and that the acceptance of that reality, it's just so important. And yeah, but where I sit, like the smart part of me knows that it's always going to be that way, but the romantic in me is so gel that you got to publish
Yeah.
David's book, and because it's not only a great book, it's fantastic writer who knows how to read. So you got the pleasure of organizing readings with him, and that to me is worth all that hard work.
Mm-hmm.
To be able
Exactly.
to be a colleague of somebody that you're just like, oh my god, you know?
Yeah, that you kind of once idolized, or once, you still
Yeah,
do. It's just that you get to know the person,
yeah.
you know. Um, yeah, and it's amazing getting to know someone that you idolized. But yeah,
When I
it's
found out that he has to have 3 square meals a day, just like me, I was whoa.
right, right. Yeah, I know. I mean, it was like that for all of us. I mean, Katie, I actually didn't read LIE until after I got to grad school. I have this weird thing where if there is broccoli, mashed potatoes, and steak on my plate, like I'm gonna eat the mashed potatoes last. You know what I mean? Like that's just me, or maybe with the steak, but I don't know. I mean, a lot of things you're talking about are just like this push and pull. I mean, we all know that life is a series of these like paradoxes. And yeah, I mean, and in a lot of ways, it's just this striving for immortality or like posterity, whatever you want to call it. Like, yeah, even if you have the Nobel Prize sitting on your desk or the Newbery, whatever the MacArthur or whatever, it's never going to be enough. It's you're searching for like once you need that, your ego needs to be involved,
Yeah.
but there needs to be this other half that is sated as you're going along. The process itself is what is what satisfies you. Um, so that because that's what keeps you going. If it was all ego driven and it was all, you know, let's get like let's get recognized, let's get to the top, it would be exhausting. It would never work. You would not you at some point you would burn out. Um, and it happens sometimes. It's happened to me. It's happened to me. I mean, when I lost that agent before I had that conversation with John K. Um, I should just officially say John K. is our third co-founder, our first, whatever you want to call it. If you're gonna say it's Katie Rainey, and John K. But I mean, before I had that conversation with him, it was hard. I mean, like I really thought I was going places. I was having sit down dinners with like this agency and stuff. So it was a really tough moment for me. But if that was it, if that was all it was about, I would have just quit. Even though I've threatened to do that many times. We all get there. In the writing business, it's just very tough these days. Like, I don't know. If I can just talk a little bit about, that's another thing. That's a part of the timeline that when you put someone on the spot, you're like, how did you get here? It's like, oh shit, that took like 6 years. Yeah. How do I say that? No, it's really hard.
You just say that because
but the reasons are one of the big parts. Were some of the big parts as well. It's like we saw. Okay, do you know Sergio de la Papa? No. It's amazing how many people don't know him still, even though he's kind of gotten a little bigger. But he published this novel called A Naked Singularity in 2008, I want to say. And before that, he had sent it to maybe like 100 agents before his wife self-published it for him. And she somehow got tens of thousands of copies out the door. And then it got picked up by the Chicago University Press or Press of Chicago. I can't even remember. It was some academic press. It was really strange. And I mean, one of the best books. I'm not kidding you. Like, I'm not just saying this for the sake of like being on a podcast and being sensationalist. Like, literally one of the best books I've ever read in my life. Like the James Joyce of our time, the Ulysses of our time. It is just unbelievable.
It's interesting that you just compared him to James Joyce, who I got back here, because he's using the dashes as well in much the same way.
Right. I'm looking. There are a lot of similarities.
I just pulled it up. Yeah,
a lot of the similarities. The dashes, like none of the dialogue stuff. Like sometimes he uses the open quotes and stuff, but there's a lot of similarities. But it's modernized. It's extremely witty. I mean, the language is highfalutin. Don't get me wrong, but it's hilarious. It's everything I love about literary fiction in one book. It's like it challenges you, but it's also down there in the muck with like all of us degenerates, just like having a good time. Like I love it so much. But so I read this book, and then a few years later, like I feel like I go through the same process as him. I'm sending my book out to all these agents, and they're all rejecting it. I finally get one. I get dropped. And so I finally meet the guy, and like I can't help but like cleave my way into a relationship, like a friendship with him and his wife. I feel like at some points they got so annoyed with me, but they would never say that. But we love them so much. They came on the podcast. Sergio did, but yeah, I mean, he just published a book with Penguin. Like it's like you just and he's right there with you. Like he feels like you don't make it. You just keep going and you keep loving what you do. But there was a point I wanted to get back to, right? Why we started the press. It's because I have a firm belief that the big presses are no longer going to be the advocates for the kind of work that I want to see anymore. And part of that's still the young rebel in me. That's like, look, the man, all this Main Street bullshit, whatever. But a part of the vast majority of it is real and genuine. It's like really fiction is not dying. It's like still there, but it's competing with a lot of other mediums that are a lot more accessible and they're easier. It's easier to sit down and just turn it off and just be absorbed in like a TV show or something, you know? And the big presses are scared of that. They're scared. And they think that by putting out more accessible, generic, paint by numbers type material,
Yeah.
it's going to help them. Like now we're going to compete with those mediums. And I couldn't disagree more. I think there are millions of Redditors out there. Speaking of like, you know, the time that we're in with all this GameStop shit. But speaking of Redditors, there are millions of these Redditors on here talking about the literary fiction that we love that, you know, that came at any point, you know, along the trajectory of the, you know, the innovation of this technology that we call fiction, you know, and they're hungry for this stuff. There are people that know about Sergio de la Pava because of this. There's a reason that all these people bought his book, even though they had no idea who the fuck this person was, you know. And so that's a big part, you know, community, you know, starting the reading series, that was, you know, a major driver. And also this whole idea of, you know, right now we're doing a very small part, but it's a part in upholding what we think should be a part of culture still, and especially like art culture.
Yeah, and I feel that I think that would be like my number one reason for doing anything is just because what I'm seeing out there isn't really out there, and you guys are putting out the kind of work I want to see. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
be linking to this author as well as your book because we discussed him, but I'm also going to order his book as soon as we're done because these sort of more experimental styles is what I'm really into. I think the majority of my book purchases these past 3 years have been either from an indie press or an academic press. The only book I've purchased as of late that is from a mainstream press was Obama's book.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And fair enough.
And yeah,
You know,
and it, like
it's too juicy.
yeah, it's too juicy. I'm really
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
politics, and so, but I'm 100% on board with your mission. If you ever want to promote any future releases through this podcast, you just let me know. You guys are front of the line. Just want you to know
Awesome.
that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Anyway, yeah, I think we got a good about 45 minutes in. I don't know how if you have a hard out, if you want to keep going, it's up to you.
Yeah. Let me see if there's anything I want to say. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I guess the only other thing I would say is that, you know, adding on to that whole idea of why we started the press, it's like
Yeah.
we're not, you know how I said, like, you know, there's kind of this synthetic, like, you know, inner rebel in me, this like youth rebel. And I don't think that's as genuine because I really feel like this fiction's important. You know, it's not just like, I think mainstream fiction should exist. I think all of these things should exist. It's just that they shouldn't crowd out the things that are also really important, perhaps more important, you know, even if not as many people are going to read this stuff. I mean, our leaders a long history have been reading these things. You know, they've read like the feminist books, like, you know, that have gotten us here. They've read the postmodern books that have gotten here, like all these intellectual movements. And now we're seeing that die out. I mean, like Biden loves Scottish poetry, for example. Like, you know, but with Trump, that was one of the first things we saw where it's like, this guy doesn't read, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a reflection of the culture, you know? And I think that's really scary and I don't like that. So I think, you know, and adding on to that, it's also that we don't just put out books that are like very pyrotechnic, like long sentences, like, you know, postmodern, all that stuff. And people will see that with our next book. Annie's book is the language is a lot more cogent and incisive. Not more incisive, but in a different way, in a cogent way. A lot tighter. And again, not that like, you know, like me or David's sentences aren't, but like, you know, it's, you know, people know what I'm saying when I say that. It's not maximalist, I guess you want to say. And it might be a different sort of read for a lot of people. Like, you know, you might not like it, you know, someone else might not like it, but we love it. You know, it's like, you know, and I'm using the Queen's you know, when I say that, but, you know, it's like, we're still very open-minded, but it's just that we don't want this stuff to go out and we don't want it to go into extinction because it would it would just be horrible. I mean, when we get to the point where we have Neuralink and we can just see into each other's minds, it's like, who knows how, like, what books are going to be that by that point. They might end up being incredibly important because seeing too much is maybe a problem. Like, who knows, you know? I don't know. I'm just spitballing now, but I just want people to say, like, we're not, Animal Riot Press isn't like some defiant, like, contentious, fuck the man press. That's not it at all. It's just that we think that things are becoming way too narrow.
Yeah.
Ironically,
you're filling a gap. You're filling a gap that needs to be filled.
Right. So, but yeah, no, this has been great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here. This will probably go live second Monday of February. So not this Monday, but next Monday.
Okay, cool. One more thing.
Yeah.
Like, do you edit this? I'm assuming.
Not really. Only if it's requested, or if, like.
Cool. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Keep that in.
Yeah.
The only other thing I want to say is, if you want to check out our books, go to animalriotpress.com.
Yeah.
Check us out on Facebook, Animal Riot Press, on Twitter, at Animal Riot Press, and Instagram too. So,
okay. Yeah, and I'll I'll put links in the descriptions of the audio and the YouTube version of this, and
cool.
I'll make sure I do it as well. Again, thank you. I love what you're doing. I know the grass isn't really greener on the other side, which makes this all that more important. And so,
right.
Feel free to send me your press releases or whatever, and
awesome.
Keep this going.
Awesome. We will take you up on that.
Thanks.
Cool. All right. Thanks, man.
Right.